from the sidelines, because the presidential election really comes down to a handful of swing states. Florida used to be one of those. This year's presidential race is being decided in 6 states: Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, Arizona, Georgia, Nevada. Again, Florida's not on the list. My question to all of you is Florida off the table because it's now viewed as Republican? And do you expect the major presidential candidates, and I'm talking both Donald Trump and Joe Biden, the presumptive nominees, to even pay attention to Florida Hispanics?
We've heard from Fernanda. We heard from you already on this. Anybody else why are Democrats just throwing their arms up in the air and saying Florida is not at play?
Well, there definitely has been an abandonment. It occurred in 2022. We saw an investment of only 2% by Democrats compared to 2018 and into the elections here, and you get what you pay for, and that's what happened here. And we had an issue where we saw it wasn't DeSantis turning the state red, it was that people stayed home. We had 35% turnout among Hispanics. Only 13% of the electorate was Hispanic in 2022. So people simply stayed home. It's not that he convinced them to. Now, I've heard from people close to the campaign that Florida will be a priority. I also see in Miami-Dade County, we still have an 80,000 voter edge, and abortion will be on the ballot. And we see Daniela Levine Cava with very good polling coming into the general. So I do think that there are factors there that will help. It might not happen this cycle, but definitely I think Democrats have the opportunity to build on what's in the ground right now.
And I think the question, Eliott, is as far as the future forecasting. If you look at the 36 statewide contests that have happened in Florida in the last 20 years in this century, Republicans have won 30 out of 36. Democrats have only won 1 statewide election in the last 12 years. So it's not a very good record, so to speak. But I think depending on the outcome now, because there's not going to be that type of engagement, I think if it is closer, then to Jose's point, you might see the Democrats re-engage. President Biden will continue to come here because this is a state where there's a lot of fundraising to be had. So we'll come back to this state to raise funds. I think Donald Trump, obviously living here, will do so as well. So the question about Florida in the future, a lot of it will be determined by based on what happens now in 2024.
But Fernand, if the Hispanics stayed home in this election, who turned Florida red?
DeSantis did not add to his margins.
But who turned Florida red?
In 2022.
Who turned Florida red?
People stayed home.
No,
somebody had to vote and turn it red. Who did?
The Republicans did turn out. Republicans did turn.
No,
I mean, yes.
Let's look at voter registration figures, and I think it's very important. There has been in the last 4 years, the Democrats have lost 980,000 voters, right? And well, it's a good question.
That's why we're here.
But the reality is that in terms of Hispanics in the state, there are still more Hispanics who are Democrats than Hispanics who are Republicans.
Well, I've seen your numbers from the survey, and many of the Hispanics are becoming independent.
Right. That's where they're going.
Off by both parties.
Right. The majority right now of registered voters in the state are NPAs, right? And among Hispanics as well. And in only 3 counties, Miami-Dade County, Polk, and Lee, are there more Hispanics who are Republicans than Hispanics who are Democrats. So again, politics is cyclical, right? And especially when we have a democracy, when we allow the opposition to win, and when there is turnover. Yes, Fernand, I think you're right. It's been a 30-year, 36-year thing. But I think there will be, nationally and in states, there will be
let me
cycles.
ask you a question, because you came to this country in the Mariel boat lift, and what a wonderful success story your family is. What about the kids who are DACA kids who came as children to this country and grew up here and went to local high school and are American in every way except documentation? Why are the Republicans so against helping out the DACA kids?
It's not Republicans. It's Republicans and Democrats. We've had
Obama created the DACA.
right. Well, why didn't this administration pass it? He's had both.
It's
both
gotta go through
cabinets.
Congress.
Yeah, well, he had both at one point. But let me say
And I
something.
think the Supreme Court ruled on it, didn't it?
Let me say something real quick, Eliott, to the
Go ahead.
previous point, if you will. You know, I think that there's a real opportunity for our country with the Hispanic voters because you don't have lifelong Republicans and you don't have lifelong Democrats. Our representatives are going to really have to work hard and convince our Hispanic voters. And I think there's a real opportunity for our country to do better on both parties. This should not be about being a Republican or being a Democrat. It should be about doing what's right for our nation and for our future generations, irrespective of party. And I think that, to Nanoska's point, that is exactly what we have lost. And they want to put us in boxes and label us. The party of non-labeling has been doing a lot of labeling. And I think that we need to eradicate those labels and hyphenations and not vote because I'm Cuban, I'm going to vote Republican. No, because they're going to take me for granted. I am going to vote for the better candidate, irrespective of who they are.
Are the Democrats the only ones doing labeling, Jose?
I think the answer is clear on that. The whole socialism thing, I think, is.
But what
is
about
a
talking
good
about
example.
people crossing the border and
Yes, and
poisoning
going-
our
To
blood?
the border point that the professor said, we're not just getting Latin Americans. We're getting Asians. We're getting Caribbeans. We're getting a whole
Well,
host
don't they
of
have the
immigrants that
right?
are not being vetted.
Don't they have the right have a shot at the American
Legally,
dream? Yes, if
correctly.
they go through the legal.
Yes.
If they show up at the border and they say, "I'm here. I want to make a case
And
for."
so the person that's back
staying
at their
here."
house, the person that's back in their countries, whether they're in Ukraine or they're in another nation and they're waiting patiently for their papers to show up in order to come in a plane and come here. And listen, I didn't come in a plane. I came in a boat, and I understand the process. I am a political prisoner, or the daughter of a political prisoner. I
Right.
am a political exile. So one thing is to come to the United States when you're being persecuted for political purposes, and another thing is when you're coming for economic expediency.
That's a very
There's
interesting-
a difference.
So what if you're leaving the country that has the highest murder rate in the world and you want a better life?
Well, you know what? Vote in a Bukele.
Eliott, let me, because I think this is it's a very interesting thing because again, I worked with Marielitos and I was one of those who was vetting Marielitos, right? And that was my very first job, as a matter of fact. Let me tell you something, that Marielitos did not come to the United States legally. They were legalized when they got here, which is the same thing that happens what Eliott was saying. You arrive at the border, you turn yourself into an immigration authority, they give you parole or they give you a date to show up if you're claiming asylum. That gives them legal status in the United States.
But Marielitos
techni-
didn't have them for years.
because Marielitos are part of a longer
They
process,
did not have them
which
for
is
years, which that's why most of them ended up in prison if
And-
they had a
most
traffic
of-
ticket. A traffic
Yes,
ticket.
yes,
most of them did
That's-
not end up
no,
in jail.
not most
No,
of them, but
no,
a lot of them
no.
ended in
No.
Atlanta prison when they
No,
had the riots. There
I-
were people there that were not criminals.
I worked in Atlanta.
They had just
I was-
had
I
a
was in-
traffic ticket.
I was in Atlanta, Ninoska.
I was there too.
I
I
interviewed
was
many
there
people.
too.
Area, in the Orange Bowl, we had to have a sponsor family and live with them so we wouldn't be a burden onto a lyrical society.
Can we all be in agreement that after the Mariel boat lift, the murder rate in Dade County went through the roof?
Certainly.
I mean, and
And
I'm
it's happening
Cuban.
now.
I'm Cuban. I can say
I
that
saw
because
the
it's a
video.
fact.
But
I saw a
Eliott,
video on
where are the
Ferguson.
majority? Where are the majority today of Marielitos?
They're doing wonderful.
They're
They've
doing
assimilated.
fantastic.
And where are the
right?
criminals? They were
Right?
deported back
Where
to
are,
Cuba.
Now look
They
at
were deported back to
you guys
Cuba.
might
It took a long time.
might consume this wine, this Australian wine with all the prisoners on it, right?
Yes.
All right. They were given the choice: death penalty, or you go to Australia.
They should
Right?
Guys, we're running short on
Many of
time.
us came
We
here
have
on
one
that.
last
So-
question from the audience. Go ahead.
Good evening. My name is Maria Laurencio, and I agree with you. I think you should vote for the person and not for the party. I am a lifelong Republican, and in 2020, I left the Republican Party. Okay? And my question for the panel is, I frequently listen to Spanish language radio stations. Do you think that this disinformation, most of it pro-Trump propaganda, being propagated on a daily basis is clouding our judgment and influencing our community?
I mean, when you start saying things such as immigrants bring the measles, that certainly leads people to think
I said
She doesn't
differently.
have a
Diseases.
radio program.
I
She
said
doesn't
diseases.
have a radio program.
But she's in a forum where that information spreads into
What
the
forum?
public.
This
What
is,
form?
she
This
lives
forum.
in a
And I have
free
the right to my opinion,
country.
as do you.
She
That's
lives
not
in
an
a free
opinion. That's not an
country.
opinion. You don't have the facts behind it.
No, and you worked for Harry Reid, who spread numerous lies, and they sold it, and he himself admitted that if he would say it 100 times, it became true. So you're not going to school me on facts.
Oh,
No.
please.
Oh,
No,
please.
no, and now you listen to the
Oh,
radio.
please.
You know what? It's like
Your
all of
fake
a sudden
outrage is
in this
astounding.
community,
You're
nowhere
being
else in the world, there was a reporter for Hispanic disinformation, conservative Hispanic disinformation. Because I say something on the radio, does that mean that it's going to radicalize some grandmother like that reporter was saying?
Well, you forgot January 6th.
Please,
forgot January
you
6th.
are labeling us as
You
stupid.
forgot January
Hispanics are
6th.
stupid because they
A
get
lot
confused.
of people showed
you
up
are
at the
labeling
Capitol on
Hispanic-
January 6th
No.
because of the lies that they heard that the election had been
No,
stolen.
they went there
Please.
because they wanted to go there. Nobody
You guys
told them
said
to
that
go
we-
there.
you said that-
Nobody
you
told
said
them
that-
to go
that-
there.
That
Donald
Trump
Trump actually
stole the
told them
election
to go
as well. Listen,
I don't know
we
about
have-
radicalizing, but I will say that you do have an important voice in this community, and you've had it for a
Yes.
long time.
And I have been a responsible person for ages in this community with a microphone in my hand. But to label this community that because they listen to the radio, they're stupid and they get convinced of what they have to say, it's racism. That's what it is.
Do we not
All
have?
right, guys.
Do we have? do
We got to
not-
wrap. I'm told we got to wrap up. We're out of time. Okay, let me thank
MSNBC.
our panelists who still want to keep going, but unfortunately we have run out of time. Irina Vilariño, Jose Parra, Eduardo Gamarra, Ninosca Perez, Fernanda Mandi. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
To my journalist colleagues, Jenny Padura from Univision, David Smiley from the Miami Herald, Sergio Bustos from WLRN, thank you very much. And to our viewers, thank you very much. I'll see you on CBS News Miami. Good night.